Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. It's Grandpop, and I'm coming to you from Watson today. And getting ready to go do something, and I have a little time, so I figured I'd do another of the Make Shakespeare Part of Your Life videos. And today I want to talk to you about a play called Twelfth Night. Now, this is the first play that I'm talking about, that I have talked about, that's not really familiar to a lot of people. There's some plays like Hamlet and Macbeth. We haven't talked about them yet, but Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, we've talked about them. And most people kind of know the stories. But this one, Twelfth Night, most people aren't familiar with it. And it's a very complicated plot, but it's a fascinating plot. So, and in fact, I had forgotten to mention this. There are no soliloquies in this. Like most of Shakespeare's plays, there's a time where the lead character or one of the lead characters is on stage by themselves and they talk to the audience. So you get to hear their thoughts because they're speaking to you, but they're not talking to anybody. They're talking to you. So you're really hearing what they're thinking. That doesn't happen here. I can't think of any often quoted things like to be or not to be, or out damn spot, or et tu Brute, or Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo. There's none of those famous lines that come from this play, but it's a great play. Now, what is Twelfth Night? It's the night of the Epiphany. It's January 6th every year. So it's the 12th day of Christmas. On the first day of Christmas, my true love, this is the 12th day of Christmas. And in some medieval traditions, it was a festival day. But not just any festival day. It was an upside down day. It was a day where some pauper would be the king, or in this case, when this was written, there was Queen Elizabeth I. They even had like some fool would be the Pope, and then the Pope would play a common man, and it only lasted for one day, and nothing that they did was, it's not like, oh, well, that guy said it that one day when he was the Pope, so now for the rest of history we have to do it that way. It was just a way for everybody to have a good time. So in this one, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to tell you about the characters, and then I'm going to tell you about the plot. And then I'll tell you how to study this play, because this is one of them that you don't want to just go see this play. If you just go in cold and watch this at some small theater production, you're going to go, what is going on here? This doesn't make any sense. So here's the characters. The main characters are twins. Now, when I say the main characters, one of them is the main character of the play. And the other twin comes in at the end, but plays a major role. So the main character is Viola. She was an aristocrat by birth who is shipwrecked. And so she winds up on this island, and she gets a job with a guy named Duke Orsino. But the job is for, I think they call him a page, a young page. It's a male. So she dresses up as a boy to go for this job interview and go. And I don't think we see the job interview. I think she already has that job by the time the play starts. And so she becomes the page for this Duke Orsino. Now, an interesting fact is that during the time that Shakespeare wrote and that these plays were put on, and for some time after this, it was illegal for women to be on the stage. Now this part of London that they were in was the bad section of London. There was all kinds of craziness. There were hookers. There was, they'd have bear fights and all kinds of stuff that was outside of the law. So no respectable man would want his daughter to be an actor. Actors were not well respected, so it was only males. Women's parts were usually played by young boys. So think about this. This is a girl dressed up as a boy. So it would be a boy playing a young woman who dresses up as a young man to get a job. I can only imagine what that would look like. When it's played these days, and I've only seen it once, and it was one that I watched on TV. I forget what the production was. It was a girl that played the part, a young lady. But it would be very interesting because these are boys and their voices are changing, so they're going like this and that, and so he's a boy dressed as a girl, dressed as a boy. If you can wrap your arms around that. Now, her brother in real life, who's shipwrecked with her, is a guy named Sebastian, and he's not in the play in the very beginning of it, or he has very little part in it. He's separated from his sister Viola during the shipwreck, and he winds up being found and rescued by a guy named Antonio. Each of the twins believed that the other twin drowned in the shipwreck, and they're dead. So they both go to this place and go, well, I'm all by myself here. So now let's follow Viola down her pathway. Olivia is another one of the main characters in this. Orsino and Olivia and Viola are the three main characters in it. Olivia is a wealthy woman. She is very, very upset. She's mourning, and she's been mourning for years because her brother has died. And so she's got the clothing of a widow, and she doesn't smile. She doesn't want to date guys or anything like that. But she's somebody who would be a real prize because she's beautiful and wealthy and powerful and blah, blah, blah. Now, Orsino is in her class. He's a wealthy nobleman. He is also miserable. He's miserable because he's in love with Olivia. Now remember, Viola, who's dressed as a boy, and his name is Cesario, when he's dressed as a boy, works for Orsino, but is really a girl. But he thinks that Cesario is a boy when it's really Viola dressed up as a boy. But he's miserable because he's in love with Olivia. At least he thinks he's in love with her. Now, the next character is a guy named Malvolio. He's one of my favorite characters. He is a prudish, tight ass. There's no other way to put it. He doesn't want anybody to have fun. He's like a religious fundamentalist. He, very straight-laced, conservative, and by that I don't mean like modern day conservative politics or anything like that. I'm talking about traditional. We got to do it this way. It's the way we've always done it. He is the head servant of Olivia. Now, Malvolio is probably the second roundest character in all of Shakespeare. I believe that Falstaff was the roundest. In Falstaff, he was in 3 plays. So you had to learn a lot about him. And that's the difference between being a flat character is you don't know much about a flat character. They just exist in the play. They're just sort of like a cutout that's there in the play to play a small role. But the big characters, the Hamlets, the Macbeths, the Lady Macbeth, you delve into what motivates them. Well, Malvolio is the second roundest character. And the plays that Sir John Falstaff, who I believe is the roundest character, and he's my favorite character in all of Shakespeare, were Henry IV Part 1 and Part 2, and he was also in The Merry Wives of Windsor. Now, so they're the 4 main characters: the twins, Viola and Sebastian, Olivia, the wealthy lady, Orsino, the wealthy man who loves Olivia, and Malvolio, who is Olivia's servant, head servant. But there's another one, there's a 5th, and this is another group, just like the twins. And we'll call them the hangers-on. They live at Olivia's house, and they're all mooches. And they are Maria, who's Olivia's maid. And when I say she's a mooch, I mean she gets paid for being a maid. So there's that. Feste. And Feste is Olivia's fool. He's there for comic relief. So this is a totally bizarre plot so far. Like, what are all these people going to do together? And remember that Epiphany, the 6th of January, is an upside-down festival day. So Feste, the fool, he might play a bigger role than you think. And maybe he won't. There's another guy with a great name. Shakespeare was awesome at coming up with these funny character names to kind of describe the people. It's Sir Toby Belch. Belch, like burp. He's Olivia's drunk, rowdy, leeching, mooching uncle. So he just lives there and lives off of her. He's like Sir John Falstaff. He's in debt. He's always drunk, and he's never paying for the alcohol. And then the 4th one of these hangers-on is a guy named Sir Andrew Aguacheek. And he is a friend of Sir Toby Belch, the drunk. And he wants to court Olivia. Now, you don't know if he loves her or not, but he wants to start formally dating Olivia, and that's why he's there with Sir Toby Belch, and he's actually one of the people that finances his drinking and all that stuff. He's totally delusional. There's no way that he could ever get next to Olivia, but he wants to. And because of that, Sir Toby shakes him down. Just like he's living there rent-free, and he's getting money from Sir Andrew, and they're both sirs. He's Sir Toby and Sir Andrew, and these guys like hang out in the kitchen and get drunk and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's an upside down play. There you got Sir Toby and Sir Andrew, and they're just in the kitchen, and then you have these also these 2 aristocrats that wash up on the shore, and they wind up, at least Viola winds up being a servant, although she is in the same class as Orsino and Olivia. And then there's one last person. This is the 6th category, and it's a single person, and that's Antonio. Antonio, I mentioned him a little bit ago. He's the guy who rescued Sebastian, and he follows him to the city that they're in, which is called Illyria. Although there's an arrest warrant for him in Illyria, but he goes anyway because he loves this boy. Now, people in modern times will say, yeah, they were probably homosexual lovers and stuff. That might be true. Who knows? I'm sure there was a lot of that going on back then. There's a lot of it going on now. But back in this time period, people would say they loved people of the same sex who weren't their relatives. And it had a different meaning. So he's there with him because he loves him so much. He loves this young man so much that he doesn't care if he gets arrested when he gets there. And at one point, he sees Olivia, or he sees Sir Andrew dueling, like with a sword, against Cesario, who is Viola. They're having a sword fight because he knows that she likes Cesario, who's really a woman, and so he calls Cesario out, and they're fighting. When Antonio shows up, he thinks it's the twin brother. He thinks it's Sebastian, because he gets separated from Sebastian when they get there, and he's like, oh no, and he jumps in there to rescue who he thinks is Sebastian, and he gets locked up. Now, he's a very flat character. He's just in there as a placeholder to get Sebastian to the scene, and he winds up like the difference between a tragedy and a comedy, and this would be considered a comedy. It's not a comedy because it's funny, although it is. But Romeo and Juliet, there was nothing in it funny. But if Romeo and Juliet got married at the end of it, it would be a comedy. They died at the end of it, so it's a tragedy. That's the main difference in Shakespeare and in Greek tragedies and Greek comedies. At the end of a comedy, everybody gets married, and at the end of a tragedy, everybody dies. In Hamlet, there's dead bodies all over the stage by the time the thing's over. But Antonio winds up just being like a fifth wheel. He doesn't hook up with anybody here. Everybody else hooks up. Malvolio doesn't hook up, but he doesn't have to. He's not part of that whole thing. They do something to Malvolio, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, so what you have here is kind of a love triangle. You have this woman, Viola, who is working for Orsino, and she starts to fall in love with him. And then Orsino, he loves the Countess Olivia. And he sends Cesario, Cesario, I have to every once in a while check. When I'm watching the play, I have it all together. But so he sends Viola, who's dressed up and is called Cesario, over to Olivia's house to woo her by proxy. So it's like, go over there, take this letter to her, tell her I said this, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. He's sending her over there, and she spurns the Duke's proposal, but she starts to fall in love with Cesario. who's a woman, but she thinks Cesario is a guy. Still following this? So then in the middle of it, they put Malvolio in here. Now, Malvolio works for Olivia. Olivia must have been really something, because he also thinks he loves her. But he doesn't really want her for her. He wants her for the power that he would have. He's her servant. He's a pretty influential guy. He's running the household for her. People can't go like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like if the maid, what was her name? Maria. If Malvolio tells Maria to do something, she has to do it. So he's powerful. He's the second most powerful person in this house. But he wants to be the most powerful person. So, but of course, he's a tightwad, tight butt. So he disapproves of all the other members of the household, the gaggle of people. Her drunken uncle, Sir Toby, his friend, Sir Andrew Aguacheek, and her servants, Maria, Feste, and another one named Fabia, who's a minor character. He's always, coming in and going, what are you people doing here? Ah, get off my lawn. So they decide to play a trick on him. And as I said, he's secretly in love with Olivia. So what they do is they trick him into believing that Olivia loves him too. But she just doesn't want to say anything. But they know. Oh, they know about this. So what they do is they forge a letter and they leave it where they know that Malvolio is going to pick it up. And it's addressed something like, to the one I love. And he gets the letter, and I don't think it was in an envelope or anything. It was just laying there. And he starts reading it, and it says, if you love me too, you'll wear crossed garters and yellow stockings. So they wore these breeches that came up just below the knee, and these long stockings, and then they held them up with garters. So she had mentioned that the stupidest look that a man could have is to have yellow stockings and crossed garters. So they say, wear that and smile all the time. I'll know that you feel the same for me that I feel for you if you dress like that and you smile all the time, like a lunatic. And he does what the letter says. And Olivia's like, what is wrong? This guy's completely nuts. So she has him locked up in the basement. And there's one famous illustration from one of the plays, the playbooks that I read it from, that has a picture, an illustration of him looking out of this basement window with the bars on it. And he's like, oh, man. And he's locked up in there. Now, Sebastian arrives on the scene. Remember who Sebastian is? He's with the guy Antonio. He looks exactly like his sister, Viola, but he's really a guy. So, and he believes that she's dead. He arrives with his buddy, his protector, Antonio, who rescued him from the shipwreck, and then Sebastian meets Olivia. Now, at some point in time in here, I jumped ahead. There was the sword fight and all that stuff, and Antonio gets involved and gets locked up. So when Sebastian meets Olivia, he doesn't know who she is, but she thinks it's Cesario, Viola. And she comes up to him. She's just tired of all these people being in love with her and doing all this crazy nonsense. And she comes up and goes, listen, you're the one. I want you to marry me. And he goes, this is a friendly town. I mean, she's a duchess. You could tell by the way people were dressed back then. Like now you can't. You see Elon Musk and he's, dressed like a normal everyday guy. He's not wearing billion-dollar suits. I guess he could. But back then, you dressed your class in society. And so he agrees they're going to get married. So there's confusion reigning supreme because he still thinks that this is Cesario, Viola. He doesn't know that it's Sebastian. So there's all this confusion because you have the twins and one of them's dressed as a boy even though he's a girl, and the other one's really a boy. And exactly who's promised to whom? Who is promised to whom? So eventually in this play, and I, spoiler alert, or I won't give you a spoiler alert, it's all revealed. The brother and the sister are reunited, and the love triangle is resolved into two couples. Sebastian and Olivia, and Viola and Orsino. At this point in time, Viola discovers the trick, or I think it's actually Olivia. Olivia discovers the trick. I put this down incorrectly. That's played on Malvolio, and she sets him free. And they all live happily ever after. Now, how do you study this play? Because you do need to study it. Like I said, don't just go there and watch the play. I mean, you can do that, and you might have a good time, especially if they have a cash bar. So go online and read the plot. Go to the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is what I did. It's in the city that Shakespeare was born and raised in, and where he lived, even though he kind of lived in London. He always had his residence in Stratford-upon-Avon. And it's a place that you can look up any play and it'll give you the plot. Watch a movie production of it. There was a Charlton Heston 1970 production. I didn't watch that. I was researching for this, and I couldn't find the one that I saw, which wasn't as old as the Charlton Heston one. Read the play. Use a good book like an Arden, an Oxford, a New Cambridge version. And those kind of books, they're going to have all these footnotes because it's in an archaic form of English. And you're going to go like, well, I don't even know what they're saying here. Well, it'll tell you what they're saying. And that's why you want to do it before you go to see the play. So you actually know what's going on. Read the play out loud. If you have somebody in your life who also wants to learn about Shakespeare, like pick two of the characters and pick a scene and just read it to each other. Act it out loud. Or just read it out loud yourself. Read the whole play out loud. Walk around your house. To be or not to be. Read the cliff notes, the spark notes, other helps. And then, and only then, go see it in person and enjoy it. Because it is really good. Peace out.